Repetition is not harmless. It is not neutral. Every repeated action, thought, and focus leaves an imprint. What you repeat does not stay on the surface of your life. It moves inward, slowly shaping how you see yourself and how you respond to the world. Most people believe identity is something fixed, something they are born with or discover one day. In reality, identity is trained. It is built through what you practice daily, especially when no one is watching. The mind learns through repetition, not intention. You may intend to be calm, disciplined, confident, or focused, but intention alone does not rewire behavior. The mind listens to what is repeated, not what is promised. If you repeatedly entertain doubt, your identity becomes cautious. If you repeatedly indulge distraction, your identity becomes scattered. If you repeatedly return to awareness, your identity becomes grounded. The mind does not argue with repetition, it submits to it. Every day, you are teaching yourself who you are, not through big decisions, but through small, repeated behaviors. How you start your morning, what you allow into your attention, how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. These moments seem insignificant, but they are powerful because they occur again and again. Over time, repetition becomes belief, and belief becomes behavior. Eventually, behavior becomes identity. Many people try to change their lives by force. They push, they pressure, they criticize themselves. This creates resistance. Real change is quieter. It comes from steady repetition without emotional drama. When something is repeated long enough, it no longer feels like effort. It feels natural. At that point, discipline is no longer something you do, it is something you are. The danger is that repetition works whether you are aware of it or not. You do not need to consciously choose it. Your environment repeats messages to you constantly. Social media, conversations, habits, routines. These repetitions slowly define your standards. What you tolerate becomes normal. What you normalize becomes your identity. This is why unconscious repetition is so destructive. It shapes you without your permission. Repetition shapes not only what you do, but how you interpret reality. Two people can experience the same situation and respond completely differently because their inner repetitions are different. One has practiced patience. The other has practiced reaction. One has repeated self-respect. The other has repeated self-doubt. The external event is the same, but the internal training is not. This is why motivation fades and identity remains. Motivation is emotional and temporary. Identity is stable and quiet. When something becomes part of your identity, you no longer negotiate with it. You do not ask if you feel like doing it. You simply act in alignment with who you believe you are. Repetition is how that belief is formed. At first, repetition feels artificial. It feels forced. You may not feel connected to it. You may even resist it. This is normal. The old identity feels threatened. The mind prefers familiarity over growth. But repetition does not require belief in the beginning. It only requires consistency. Belief comes later, once the nervous system adapts. When you repeat calm behavior, your body learns safety. When you repeat focused attention, your mind learns stability. When you repeat restraint, your impulses weaken. These changes are subtle, but cumulative. One day, you notice you are no longer reacting the way you used to. Not because you tried harder, but because you trained differently. Identity is not formed in moments of intensity. It is formed in moments of boredom. When nothing exciting is happening and you still choose awareness. When no one is watching and you still choose discipline. When progress feels invisible and you still return to practice. These are the moments that define you. What you repeat under pressure becomes automatic under stress. This is why repetition must be intentional. In difficult moments, you do not rise to your ideals. You fall back on your training. If your training is chaos, you collapse. If your training is clarity, you remain steady. Identity reveals itself most clearly when things go wrong. Repetition also shapes self-trust. Each time you follow through on a small commitment, you reinforce the identity of someone who can rely on themselves. Each time you break a promise to yourself, you reinforce the opposite. Over time, this creates confidence or insecurity, strength or hesitation. Not because of talent, but because of repeated evidence. You cannot think your way into a new identity. You must act your way into it. Thought follows action. Emotion follows behavior. This is why daily practice matters more than deep understanding. Understanding without repetition changes nothing. Repetition without understanding still creates change. The identity you want is not waiting for a breakthrough. It is waiting for consistency. It is built in minutes, not milestones. in returning again and again to what aligns you, in choosing the same discipline on days you feel strong and days you feel weak, in removing drama from growth and replacing it with structure. Repetition does not rush. It does not demand results. It simply continues. And because it continues, it transforms quietly, steadily, without announcement. Until one day your reactions are different, your standards are higher, your presence is calmer, and your life reflects the identity you have been practicing all along. Most people wait for motivation. They wait to feel inspired, energized, emotionally ready. They believe motivation is the engine of success. But motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with mood, sleep, environment, and circumstance. Discipline, on the other hand, does not depend on how you feel. Discipline is action without negotiation. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is a structure. A spark can start a fire, but only structure keeps it burning. When you rely on motivation, your progress becomes inconsistent. Some days you act, some days you stop. Your identity becomes fragmented. When you rely on discipline, action becomes steady. Progress becomes inevitable. The mind prefers comfort. It seeks pleasure and avoids effort. Motivation aligns with this preference. It appears when something feels exciting or rewarding. But life-changing actions are rarely exciting in the beginning. They are repetitive, slow, and sometimes uncomfortable. Discipline exists precisely for these moments. It carries you when motivation disappears. Discipline is not harshness, it is clarity. It is the decision to follow a path regardless of internal noise. When you wake up and do what must be done without argument, you are practicing discipline. When you sit down to focus despite distractions, you are practicing discipline. When you pause instead of reacting, you are practicing discipline. Motivation asks, do I feel like it? Discipline states, this is what I do. This difference seems small, but it reshapes identity. A motivated person is dependent on external energy. A disciplined person is self-directed. Over time, discipline builds self-trust. You become someone who acts, not someone who waits. Many people misunderstand discipline as punishment. They think it requires extreme force, self-criticism, or rigidity. True discipline is quiet and consistent. It is the ability to return again and again without drama. It does not demand perfection. It demands presence. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is behavioral. Emotions fluctuate, behavior trains the mind. When you repeat disciplined actions, your mind adapts. What was once difficult becomes natural. What was once resisted becomes routine. Eventually, discipline becomes your default state. In the beginning, discipline feels heavy. The mind resists. It creates excuses, distractions, and doubts. This resistance is not a sign to stop. It is evidence that change is occurring. The old patterns are being challenged. Discipline continues despite this resistance. Over time, discipline creates freedom. This seems paradoxical. People believe freedom means doing what they want when they want. In reality, that leads to chaos and dependency on impulse. Discipline creates inner stability. With stability comes clarity, and with clarity comes real choice. A disciplined mind is not controlled by every thought or feeling. It observes and decides. It is not pushed by impulse nor pulled by fear. It stands steady and acts deliberately. This is power. Motivation often seeks immediate reward. Discipline is comfortable with delayed outcomes. It understands that the most meaningful results appear slowly. Discipline plants seeds without demanding instant growth. It waters them daily regardless of visible progress. This is why discipline builds resilience. When results are invisible, motivation fades. Discipline remains. When challenges arise, motivation hesitates. Discipline persists. When boredom appears, motivation leaves. Discipline stays. Your nervous system learns from discipline. It learns that action does not require emotional permission. It learns that effort is safe. It learns that discomfort is temporary. This retraining changes how you experience difficulty. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Discipline also shapes self-respect. Each disciplined action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Each time you follow through, you strengthen the identity of someone who is reliable, grounded, and capable. Each time you avoid action, you weaken that identity. Over time, these votes accumulate. You cannot build a stable life on unstable energy. Motivation is weather. Discipline is climate. Weather changes daily. Climate defines the environment. When discipline becomes your climate, your life becomes predictable in its progress. This does not mean life becomes rigid or joyless. On the contrary, discipline creates space for joy. When your fundamentals are handled consistently, your mind is free from constant negotiation. You are not constantly debating with yourself. You are simply moving forward. Discipline is also a form of compassion. It protects you from your own impulsive tendencies. It guides you when you are tired, distracted, or uncertain. It provides structure when your emotions are unclear. It is a steady companion. The practice of discipline is simple but not easy. It is the choice to act without emotional drama. It is the commitment to return even after failure. It is the refusal to abandon yourself when things feel slow. Motivation may start the journey, but discipline continues it. Motivation may inspire vision, but discipline builds reality. Motivation may fluctuate, but discipline accumulates. When discipline becomes your foundation, identity shifts. You no longer see yourself as someone who struggles to start. You see yourself as someone who moves. You no longer identify with inconsistency. You identify with steadiness. This shift changes how you approach every area of life. Discipline is not a personality trait. It is a daily practice. It is not something you are born with. It is something you cultivate through repetition. Each disciplined action strengthens the next one. Each moment of follow-through makes the next moment easier. Over time, discipline becomes less about effort and more about alignment. You no longer force yourself, you simply follow your structure. You no longer chase motivation, you trust your systems. You no longer wait, you begin. The quiet power of discipline is that it works even when you do not feel powerful. It carries you through low energy, uncertainty, and doubt. It builds momentum in silence. It shapes identity without needing recognition. It transforms life through consistent, ordinary actions repeated without interruption. Stillness is often mistaken for inaction. People believe that if they are still, they are idle, lazy, or unproductive. But stillness is not the absence of action. It is preparation for it. True power emerges from moments of pause, when the mind is quiet and clarity is allowed to settle. Most of life is spent reacting, rushing into decisions, responding to external noise, following the urgency of emotion. But reaction is not action. Reaction is impulse. Action born of stillness is deliberate, intentional, and effective. In stillness, you meet yourself. You encounter the patterns of your mind, the habitual responses that have guided your life without your permission. You see the thoughts you usually ignore, the fears you usually suppress, the impulses you usually obey. This awareness is not meant to paralyze you. It is meant to inform you. Without stillness, action becomes blind. You move, but you do not know where, why, or how. You act, but you do not create. Stillness is the foundation of strategy. Every great decision begins not with frenzy, but with pause. A river does not carve its path through force alone. It observes obstacles, it flows around them, it finds the path of least resistance. Similarly, when you cultivate stillness before action, you understand the terrain of your life. You see where effort is wasted, where energy leaks, and where focus produces results. You do not act to prove something, you act to align with purpose. The mind is often restless because it fears uncertainty. We are taught that productivity is measured in constant movement, that business equals value. But business without reflection leads only to exhaustion. It leads to mistakes repeated. It leads to decisions made from reaction rather than reason. Stillness interrupts this cycle. It creates a space where the noise fades, where the mind can sort through priorities, where clarity rises above impulse. Stillness is not a passive state. It is a conscious discipline. It is a commitment to stop rushing, to stop externalizing control, and to stop seeking immediate answers. In this pause, the mind resets, emotions settle, thoughts clarify, the body relaxes, the nervous system finds balance. From this place, action is no longer random. It is measured, precise, and powerful. Consider how trees grow. They appear still for much of their life, yet growth is constant, deliberate, and hidden beneath the surface. Their roots move deep. Their branches expand in alignment with light and gravity. The stillness above does not indicate inactivity. It reflects patience, observation, and preparation. Human action follows the same principle. Stillness allows insight to develop, understanding to deepen, and timing to mature. When you act without stillness, mistakes are inevitable. Impulse leads to regret. Hasty decisions create friction and wasted energy. You may act with intensity, but without direction, intensity alone cannot achieve mastery. Stillness before action aligns your energy with intelligence. It ensures that effort is invested wisely. It allows you to discern between what matters and what is distraction. Stillness also strengthens resilience. In the pause, you encounter discomfort, uncertainty, and fear without fleeing. You sit with tension, not to indulge it, but to observe it. You recognize that fear is temporary, that uncertainty is a part of growth, and that clarity is accessible if you allow the mind to settle. Action born from this perspective is courageous, not reckless. It is measured, not reactive. This principle extends to every area of life. In relationships, stillness prevents you from speaking from anger or impulse. It allows observation before judgment, listening before response, understanding before reaction. In work, stillness allows planning strategy and prioritization before effort. In personal growth, stillness allows reflection, self-examination, and conscious alignment before attempting change. Action without this pause often undermines itself, while action preceded by stillness compounds its effectiveness. Stillness sharpens perception. When the mind is calm, patterns become visible, connections appear, and decisions are clearer. You begin to notice the subtleties that others overlook, the timing of opportunities, the reactions of people, the undercurrents of situations. From stillness, insight arises effortlessly, and insight guides action. This is why masters in any field emphasize preparation over reaction. They act not from urgency, but from understanding, which is only possible through pause. Stillness also teaches patience. In stillness, you recognize that life is not a series of emergencies. Not every situation requires immediate response. Not every moment demands action. Some challenges resolve themselves when observed carefully. Some problems are clarified simply by waiting, by allowing context to emerge. Action without stillness often multiplies difficulty, while action guided by stillness minimizes it. Stillness before action is a form of self-mastery. It signals that you are not controlled by impulses, emotion, or external pressures. You cultivate a space where the mind governs itself, where effort is intentional, and where timing is considered. You no longer react blindly, you respond deliberately, you no longer chase outcomes, you shape them through measured steps. Even in movement, stillness can exist. You can act with the calm of one who has prepared. You can speak with authority because thought has preceded words. You can engage with intensity because clarity underpins effort. Stillness is not the opposite of action, it is its origin. It is the soil from which action grows, the foundation upon which mastery is built, and the pause that transforms chaos into order. In practice, cultivating stillness requires discipline. It demands removing distractions, slowing the breath, quieting the mind, and observing without judgment. It asks for patience when answers are not immediate, for courage when clarity has not yet arrived, and for trust that the pause is part of the process. Each moment of stillness strengthens the mind, stabilizes the body, and aligns intention with effort. Through stillness, timing becomes natural. You no longer rush to act or hesitate out of fear. You learn to sense the precise moment when action will have maximum effect. You learn to distinguish between urgency and importance, between noise and signal. This skill, once cultivated, transforms not only decision-making, but perception, energy, and the quality of life itself. Stillness is not absence, it is preparation. It is not weakness, it is strength. It is not surrender, it is control. By returning to stillness before action, you train yourself to respond with awareness, to act with precision, and to live with intention. It is in these moments of quiet that power, clarity, and transformation are born. The mind is the battlefield where every life is won or lost. Most people believe life is determined by circumstances, luck, or external events, but the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. Life is shaped by the quality of your mind. Your thoughts, your attention, your focus, and your habitual mental patterns dictate your actions, your decisions, and ultimately the trajectory of your life. If you cannot govern your mind, you surrender your life to chance, emotion, and external influence. Master the mind, and mastery over life follows naturally. The first step in mastering the mind is awareness. You cannot control what you cannot see. Yet most people drift through life unaware of the mental patterns running beneath their attention. Thoughts arise like clouds in the sky, unnoticed, unchecked, uncontested. Some are positive, some are destructive, most are neutral but repeated without observation. Each thought contributes to your identity. Each repeated thought strengthens a neural pathway, forming habits that eventually dictate your behavior. Without awareness, you are not the master of your mind, you are its passenger. Mastery begins with observation, without judgment. Watch the mind in its activity. Notice the recurring thoughts, the automatic judgments, the habitual fears, and the impulses that drive behavior. This is not a practice of criticism or suppression. It is a practice of clarity. When you observe without reacting, you begin to understand the patterns that have controlled you, often for years. Awareness is the foundation upon which discipline, focus, and self-control are built. Once awareness is established, the next step is intentional choice. Most people allow their thoughts to dictate their actions. A fleeting fear becomes hesitation. A passing doubt becomes inaction. A moment of anger becomes words spoken or actions taken that later must be regretted. Mastery of the mind is the ability to respond instead of react, to act according to intention rather than impulse, to align thought with principle rather than convenience. Choice transforms the mind from a wild force into a tool, and when the mind becomes a tool, life itself becomes manageable. Control over the mind requires training. It cannot be coerced or willed into perfection. Training begins with small, consistent practices. Meditation, focused attention, reflection, and conscious repetition all serve to strengthen mental clarity. These practices teach the mind patience, focus, and the ability to remain steady under pressure. Every time you return the mind to calm focus, you strengthen the neural circuits of discipline. Every time you resist distraction or intrusive thought, you build resilience. Mastery is cumulative, built through repeated effort, not sudden inspiration. Emotion is the most powerful force in the mind, and yet the most often misunderstood. People mistake emotional intensity for authenticity, believing that feeling deeply is the same as knowing or acting correctly. The truth is that uncontrolled emotion is a force that destroys clarity. It clouds judgment, drives reaction, and undermines intention. Mastery of the mind does not mean suppressing emotion. It means observing it, understanding its origin, and deciding whether to act upon it. When emotion is understood, it becomes a signal, not a dictator. It informs rather than controls. The mind is constantly influenced by what it consumes. Every thought, word, image, and experience shapes mental patterns. Consuming chaos, distraction, or negative influence weakens the mind. Consuming clarity, knowledge, and constructive repetition strengthens it. Mastery of the mind requires vigilance over input. You must guard what enters attention because repeated exposure trains the mind, whether consciously or unconsciously. Repetition shapes identity, and identity shapes action, and action shapes life. Stillness is a crucial tool for mastering the mind. In stillness, the noise of thought subsides. In stillness, patterns become visible. In stillness, the mind can rest and reset. People rush from stimulus to stimulus, believing that business equals productivity, but a busy mind is rarely a clear mind. Clarity comes in quiet observation, not in endless reaction. Mastery is built when the mind is allowed to stabilize before effort, reflection before decision, and awareness before action. Mastering the mind also means mastering attention. The mind is easily scattered. It chases novelty, distraction, and emotional highs. Yet life is determined by what you focus on consistently. Attention is the currency of life. Where attention flows, energy follows. Where energy flows, action follows. Where action follows, results emerge. To master life, you must first master where your attention is placed, what it is allowed to follow, and how it is directed. Every moment you deliberately focus is a vote for the life you intend to create. Self-talk is another battlefield. The inner voice is constant, shaping perception and influencing choice. Unchecked, it repeats old fears, doubts, and limitations. Mastery of the mind requires discipline over this inner dialogue. Speak with intention, not habit. Correct distorted thoughts. Reinforce constructive ones. The quality of your inner conversation determines the quality of your external life. The mind can be trained to sustain focus, resist impulses, and act with clarity, but this is not instantaneous. It requires consistency, patience, and deliberate practice. Just as a warrior owns skill through repetition, so too the mind is owned through disciplined engagement. Each moment of conscious thought, each pause before reaction, each choice aligned with principle, strengthens the mind and extends mastery into all areas of life. The mind is not only the generator of action, but also the interpreter of experience. Two people can face the same situation and perceive it entirely differently. One sees obstacles, limitations, and fear. The other sees opportunities, lessons, and control. The difference is not circumstance, it is the mind. By mastering your mind, you shape not only how you act, but also how you perceive, interpret, and respond to life. Perception becomes precise. Decisions become deliberate. Energy becomes concentrated. Mastering the mind also involves accepting responsibility. Most people blame life for their circumstances, But life is simply the reflection of internal states made manifest. Control the mind, and you reclaim responsibility for outcomes. Relationships, habits, and choices. You no longer surrender your well-being to external chaos or the whims of others. You anchor yourself in internal sovereignty. Thought becomes habit. Habit becomes character, and character becomes destiny. Mastering the mind ensures that this progression moves in alignment with intention. Without mastery, destiny is left to chance, impulsive thought, and emotional reaction. With mastery, life becomes an extension of deliberate action, a mirror of clarity, and a product of conscious design. Every practice that strengthens focus, patience, and observation contributes to the mastery of life. Every repeated act of self-discipline reinforces neural pathways that shape perception, decision-making, and behavior. Every moment of stillness, reflection, and conscious choice accumulates into mental resilience. Mastering the mind is not merely a strategy for success. It is the foundation upon which the quality of life, relationships, and personal fulfillment is built. Transformation is rarely sudden. It is not the result of one dramatic choice, one moment of inspiration, or one grand gesture. Most people wait for a miracle, a breakthrough, or a sudden surge of motivation, but real change is built quietly, incrementally, through small daily alignments. What you do consistently, not what you do occasionally, shapes your life. Every repeated thought, action, and decision accumulates, whether consciously or unconsciously, into patterns that define your reality. Massive transformation is not an accident, it is the inevitable result of alignment practiced day after day. Small daily alignment begins with attention. Where your focus goes, energy flows. If you give your attention to chaos, distraction, or negativity, you train your mind to drift. If you give your attention to clarity, intention, and constructive practice, you train your mind to steady. The mind is a habitual instrument. It repeats what it knows. By aligning your attention with purpose each day, even in small increments, you gradually change how your mind operates, how you respond to challenges, and how you perceive opportunities. Over weeks, months, and years, this repeated alignment accumulates into a mental architecture capable of sustaining growth, resilience, and clarity. Consistency is the essence of alignment. One act of discipline, one moment of insight, or one period of focused attention is insufficient to change identity. Transformation is cumulative. It is built through the repetition of small actions performed with integrity and intention. Brushing aside daily habits, skipping deliberate focus, or allowing chaos to dominate your attention, even for a single day, creates gaps in this architecture. Conversely, returning to alignment, no matter how minimal the effort, reinforces identity. Repetition is the bridge between intention and transformation. Daily alignment is also about simplicity. Massive transformation does not require grand strategies or complex systems. It begins with a few basic principles consistently applied. Waking with intention, taking purposeful actions, managing attention, and reflecting on outcomes are the small threads that weave a disciplined life. Complexity often masks avoidance. People overcomplicate transformation because they hope effort alone will create results. Real change is not about doing more, it is about doing what matters consistently, even when it feels small or invisible. Every choice you make either aligns with your long-term growth or pulls you away from it. Eating, moving, thinking, speaking, and resting all contribute to the trajectory of your life. When these choices are consciously aligned, they reinforce each other. Energy, focus, and clarity begin to flow naturally. Misalignment, even if minor, introduces friction. Small acts of inconsistency, procrastination, distraction, unregulated emotion compound over time, creating patterns that are difficult to reverse. Massive transformation emerges when you recognize that consistency in alignment matters more than intensity or frequency of isolated effort. Daily alignment also creates momentum. Each aligned action, no matter how small, is a vote for the person you are becoming. Over time, these votes accumulate into identity. You begin to act, think, and respond in ways consistent with the transformation you desire. Momentum is invisible at first, but persistent repetition amplifies its effect. Small victories compound, creating a sense of capability that reinforces future alignment. Massive transformation, therefore, is the natural product of incremental, consistent reinforcement rather than sudden, sporadic effort. Another crucial aspect of small daily alignment is attention to internal states. Transformation is not solely external, it is deeply internal. Thoughts, emotions, and mental habits shape behavior. By aligning internal states each day through reflection, mindfulness, and conscious awareness, you create a foundation for consistent external action. The outer world follows the inner world. One day of clarity does not change the mind, but the habitual cultivation of mental alignment ensures that responses to life's challenges are intentional, measured, and effective. Small daily alignment also fosters resilience. Life is unpredictable. External events are beyond your control. Transformation is tested most in moments of pressure, stress, or uncertainty. Alignment practiced in ordinary moments builds strength for extraordinary moments. When your internal and external actions are habitual, calm, and deliberate, you are prepared to face adversity without losing direction. Massive transformation is not about avoiding difficulty. It is about cultivating consistent habits that allow stability to persist in the face of challenge. The compound effect of small actions cannot be underestimated. Tiny choices repeated consistently shape character, and character determines outcomes. A single disciplined thought or action has minimal impact, but repeated thousands of times, it reshapes the mind. Repeated alignment in relationships, work health, and personal growth accumulates into a life that reflects intention, purpose, and capability. Massive transformation is not a distant goal, it is the sum of daily alignment practiced patiently over time. Alignment also reduces wasted effort. Many people move frantically, believing that business equates to progress. They invest energy in tasks, habits, and distractions that do not contribute to long-term growth. Small daily alignment ensures that energy is directed toward actions that matter. It focuses attention, clarifies intention, and eliminates noise. Over time, this efficiency amplifies results. Transformation is accelerated not by doing more, but by aligning more consistently with what truly matters. The beauty of small daily alignment is that it is accessible to everyone. You do not need extraordinary circumstances, wealth, or talent. Transformation begins with the willingness to return to alignment day after day, regardless of mood, environment, or immediate results. Small practices repeated consistently create neural, emotional, and behavioral patterns that define your life. Every day is an opportunity to vote for the version of yourself you wish to become. Ultimately, small daily alignment is a form of self-mastery. It teaches patience, focus, and intentionality. It demonstrates that life is not shaped by isolated moments of brilliance, but by habitual, deliberate, and aligned practice. By focusing on the ordinary, mundane, and consistent actions, you create extraordinary outcomes. Massive transformation is not born from chaos or urgency, it is born from quiet, repeated alignment. The moment-to-moment choices, the small corrections, the habitual returns to intention, these are the bricks that build the foundation of a transformed life. Every action you repeat, every thought you nurture, every habit you cultivate leaves an imprint on your identity. Life is not determined by occasional effort, fleeting inspiration, or rare moments of intensity. Life is determined by what you practice consistently. You become what you practice because repeated behavior rewires the mind, strengthens the nervous system, and trains character. Practice is the bridge between intention and reality. It is the silent force that shapes who you are before you even realize it. Practice is not merely physical activity. It is a holistic process that includes thought, emotion, speech, and action. The mind learns what it experiences repeatedly. If you practice fear, self-doubt, or negativity, these states become automatic responses. If you practice courage, self-respect, and clarity, these qualities become natural. The process is gradual and subtle, often invisible until the patterns are fully formed. Yet the transformation is inevitable. The brain, the body, and the nervous system respond to repetition. Identity is molded not by occasional action, but by habitual practice. People underestimate the power of small practices. They wait for dramatic moments to define themselves. One big decision, one motivational surge, one opportunity, but identity is shaped in the mundane. The quiet moments, the repeated efforts, the daily choices determine who you are. Brushing your teeth, focusing your mind, controlling your temper, choosing to speak kindly, pausing before reacting, these are practices. They may feel insignificant, but over time they accumulate into a character that acts instinctively according to these patterns. Practice shapes perception. What you repeatedly expose yourself to, whether mentally, emotionally, or physically, becomes the lens through which you see the world. If you practice judgment and comparison, the world appears threatening and chaotic. If you practice observation and clarity, the world appears manageable and full of opportunity. Identity is formed by what the mind is allowed to repeat. External reality may remain the same, but perception changes according to what is practiced internally. You become not only your actions, but your interpretation of life. The body follows the mind. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition. Muscles develop through repeated effort. Breath patterns, posture, and physical habits are all trained. The same principle applies to mental and emotional habits. Thoughts that are repeated become reflexive. Emotions that are reinforced become instinctive. Actions that are repeated become automatic. Over time, the body, mind, and nervous system are synchronized around the qualities you practice. Mastery of life begins with mastery of practice. Practice also defines resilience. Life is unpredictable. Challenges, setbacks, and stress are inevitable. What determines how you respond is not innate talent or luck, but the habits you have trained over time. If you have practiced calm under pressure, patience, and measured decision-making, you respond to adversity with clarity. If you have practiced impulsivity, reactivity, and distraction, you respond with chaos. Practice prepares you for what life demands long before those demands appear. Consistency is the core of practice. One act repeated sporadically has limited effect. Repetition builds depth, strength, and durability. Every day is an opportunity to reinforce the patterns you wish to embody. Even when effort feels minimal or results seem invisible, the nervous system is learning. Every repeated practice, no matter how small, shapes identity. Over months and years, this invisible accumulation manifests as behavior, character, and life outcomes. Practice is also a teacher. It provides feedback and clarity. When you engage in a repeated activity, your awareness of errors, strengths, and weaknesses grows. The mind learns to self-correct, the body learns to refine movement, and the emotional system learns to respond with stability. Mastery does not occur instantly. It emerges through cycles of practice, reflection, and adjustment. Every repetition is a lesson, and every lesson strengthens the foundation of who you become. The mind resists repetition because it seeks novelty, distraction, and ease. Yet transformation requires commitment to repeated practice despite resistance. Motivation alone is insufficient. Motivation fluctuates, but practice persists. Mastery is not found in rare peaks of inspiration. It is built in daily, disciplined return to action. The mind, body, and character gradually absorb the repeated input until it becomes automatic, until the identity you wish to embody is natural. Practice shapes not only what you do, but who you are. Your relationships, work, habits, and choices are reflections of what you have trained yourself to do instinctively. People respond to you not only because of who you appear to be, but because of the energy and patterns you have reinforced through practice. A disciplined, calm, intentional person produces outcomes aligned with those qualities, while an impulsive, reactive person produces outcomes aligned with those tendencies. Life is a mirror of repeated practice. Even failure becomes instructive through practice. When you practice consistently, setbacks are absorbed as feedback rather than catastrophe. Repetition teaches the mind patience, endurance, and adaptation. The nervous system gradually internalizes lessons that cannot be learned through one-time effort or theory. Each repetition strengthens the system, making you more capable, resilient, and aligned with your goals. Practice is the quiet, invisible architect of transformation. People often look for shortcuts, external validation, or sudden insight, but lasting change does not arrive through these means. It is constructed silently, moment by moment, through the daily habits and actions you choose to reinforce. You do not become what you wish, you become what you practice. Every thought repeated, every action repeated, every alignment reinforced builds the architecture of identity. The power of practice lies in its cumulative effect. One day's effort seems insignificant. One week's effort feels incomplete. Yet over months and years, the accumulation becomes undeniable. Mastery emerges not from intensity, but from constancy. Transformation emerges not from occasional brilliance, but from steady, persistent cultivation. Every small, intentional action contributes to the structure of who you are becoming. Practice also cultivates clarity. As the mind, body, and nervous system become trained in repeated patterns, choices become easier. Action aligns with intention naturally. Focus deepens. Impulses diminish. Energy flows toward what matters. The life that once felt scattered, reactive, or chaotic begins to feel ordered, deliberate, and purposeful. The repetition itself becomes the teacher, the sculptor, and the guide,